SaWGuy podcast.
Like scary movies? What's your favorite scary movie?
Here's Johnny.
We'll tear your soul apart.
The boogeyman is real, and you found him.
Game over, man. Game over.
What do you want?
I want to hear you scream.
You miss, sucker.
Welcome to the SaWGuy podcast. As always, I'm the SaWGuy, and I'm bringing you episode 27 on The Lost Boys. I'm sure you could tell that I was already prepared because, I busted out the old leather jacket, I had to rock it, because The Lost Boys was basically made in the 80s, late 80s, but it was still 80s. Came out July 31st of 1987. And this film, I chose this one for an episode because to me, it's one of the best vampire films, I would say, of all time. Probably, I know everyone's going to give me shit right now in the comments. What are you talking about? Well, it's probably my favorite. I'm pretty damn sure it's in either your top 5. Hell, maybe it's even in some of your top 3s. Maybe it's also your favorite vampire film, right? But what's cool about this film is that there's a lot of little winks here and there onto it, and it's such a great fucking movie because it follows so many different things. And as always, like I do, I'm going to break down the film for you. Try not to talk too much into it and give you my opinion and see what you guys think and see if we share the same insight on it. Because, whenever you talk about vampire films, or at least people that I talk to, I get lots of messages almost every day. Everybody tells me, oh, you seen The Lost Boys? Oh, you seen The Lost Boys? Or what'd you think of that? So, I'm going to tell you what I all think. But anyways, if you haven't seen The Lost Boys, I'll break it down for you, like I said. It basically follows this story of a single mom who's just newly divorced. Her husband basically kept everything. And, she's a single mom, and she has 2 boys. One looks like he's in high school. Jason Patrick, he plays the character Michael. She has a younger son who looks like he's middle teenage, a tweener. Corey Haim, and he plays a character named Sam. And they have a husky dog named Nanook. But anyways, the movie starts off. It shows like a deep flying, like around the ocean and shit. And then it shows a bunch of these 80s looking people. Kiefer Sutherland, Alex Winter, and the 2 other guys that were in there. I can't remember their name. I always have all these notes, and I'm like, fuck, I can't see my notes. But anyways, it starts off where they're in this carousel. They see this chick, and Kiefer Sutherland, he basically kind of eggs on the guy, and they start a little scuffle. Then the security guard, puts a nightstick on him and tells him, I told you boys not to come back. So he basically kicks him off the premises. And then it's the end of the night, the boardwalk is closing. He's walking to the car, and then all of a sudden you see like these weird sound effects. And you don't know what it is, Spoiler alert, they're vampires. But if you've never seen this film, that's how it starts, because it builds up this anticipation. And then it goes into the family moving from Arizona, and they're driving down to Santa Carla. Santa Carla was actually, actually filmed. It's actually Santa Cruz, California. If you live in Cali like I do, everybody knows about Lost Boys. Yeah, I don't know if it's a West Coast thing or what, but everybody knows about this. Santa Cruz. Everybody knows about Lost Boys if you're from California, because I know they always do something big every year on the anniversary. But anyways, back to the story. They're moving down, and they see "Welcome to Santa Carla" sign. Then behind it, after they pass it, it says "Murder Capital of the World." Right? As they're getting there, it's if you've ever been to the California coast, it's an interesting one. Like how they perceive it in the movie, where they start playing the cover of The Doors, "People Are Strange," and it shows just all different types of people. And it's really like that because it's I shouldn't say it's very freelancing kind of deal thing. But there's a lot of opinions out there. Let's just leave it at that, right? So they stop, they get something to eat, they see how the town is. They're driving up, and eventually they go and stay with the grandpa because, the mom, she has nowhere to go. Her name's Lucy. It's actually played by Diane Wiest. She plays the mom off of, what's that movie? Edward Scissorhands. And the whole story goes is that the 2 brothers, they're close, and later on throughout the day, as they start settling in, they start talking to Grandpa. Grandpa's kind of a little kooky, maybe a couple loose screws in the head. He orders TV guides, but doesn't have a TV. Like that kind of kooky. We can all relate to that. I mean, if you grew up in the 80s, you know what I'm talking about, you know? The wonderful 80s. But anyways, later on in the story, it goes that they go and hang out at the boardwalk. Michael, he sees this chick, and it ends up being Star. Star is one of the vampires that hangs out with David. They never implied if they were together or not. She was just kind of always there with him, you know? But anyways, he sees her and he starts following her, and then he says, hey, what's your name? Let's hang out. Let's talk. She was going to jump on his bike, and they were going to ride, and then eventually David and his boys come up and calls her, hey, Star, I need you to get on my bike. Come on, you know? And then he basically says, well, ride with me. And then Jason Patrick, or Michael, he's like, well, I can't keep up with your bike, you know, because they're all like dirt bikes and shit. He goes, you don't have to beat me. You just got to keep up. So it shows that they race through the boardwalk. They go through the beach. They go towards the cliff and almost kills Michael. Then he basically slides and stops before the cliff and punches David. You and me, man. You and me. You know? And then he's like, well, how far are you willing to go? And as that scene ends, then it goes back to Corey Haim. He's hanging out at the boardwalk. He sees a comic book shop. He goes in there, and that's where he meets the Frog Brothers. You know, one of them is played by Corey Feldman. And they're just kind of like stereotypical 80s characters, just like, you know, kind of snooping around. And, you know, they start talking about comics and everything. They're all like, yeah, fancy clothes, you know. They're teasing Corey Haim because the way they had Corey Haim dressed up, they kind of dressed him up kind of like a nerdy kid in like the late 80s. And if you know what I'm talking about, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, a nerdy kid back in the day, they would wear this black and white print shit with like 80s neon fucking colors splattered all over on the shirt. I mean, that was the style. If Google Zuma pants, I mean, yeah, that's what the style was, you know, if you wanted to be hip back in the 80s, you know. Some of you guys are probably laughing or putting it in the comments below and saying, oh yeah, I remember those. Yeah, that was the 80s. But anyways, back to the movie. They start talking. They said, okay, well, there's some weird shit going on. Take this comic, it will save your life. It was basically a horror comic about vampires. And after that, you know, he's like, oh, I don't read horror comics or whatever. And he's like, no, it will save your life. People try to steal fucking comics and shit and everything. And then, you know, the scene ends and it goes back and follows Michael. Michael, he goes with David and his gang, and they go into their lair. They stayed at this hotel that was built on the fault, he said, and then it fell apart. Then afterwards, they start hanging out. Then that's where they start kind of fucking with them. They're all like, oh, we got Chinese food. You want some rice? Looks at the rice. It's fucking maggots, you know. And then later on, they bust out the bottle, and they think they're all fucking cool, you know, drinking liquor and everything, because he doesn't say what it is. And so he's like, hey, you want some? So Michael just drinks it. And then that's where it starts playing the most iconic scene, Cry Little Sister, you know? And it gets them, it's basically initiating them. But he doesn't know for what, you know? And then later on it shows that after he was, you know, drinking the wine, and then you find out later on it's blood, they go to this train track where there's like a, what do you call it, like a bridge? They park their bikes and they hang off of it while the train's going. And then he's like, you're one of us, let go! And then it goes into the fog, and it's like, what the fuck? You know? So, basically, this whole movie, it plays on the less is more approach, because you don't know that they're vampires. You know that they're something, but you don't know that they're vampires, right? And as Michael finally lets go, he's flying through the fucking fog, then falls down, and then he's back at home in his bed. And then the whole story continues about how he doesn't like the sunlight, he starts wearing sunglasses, the mom kind of gets worried. As that's going on, you know, I forgot to mention, there was a scene where the mom was hanging out at the boardwalk. She goes and helps this lost kid, and this guy who owns a video rental store, he basically says, you know, oh, hey, you have such a loving heart, you need a job. So he gives her a job, and his name's Max. You find out who he is later on in the movie. But anyways, what they did is that they play off this whole notion that they're getting settled in, you know, Michael's being initiated as one of David and his friends, and then it just chaos. You know, it basically goes into where Michael starts feeling these weird transformations. He's sleeping all day, but he's up all night. He can't eat anything. And then the mom goes out with Max, the owner of the video store, because he has a thing for her. And then they have that scene where Corey Haim's fucking taking a bath and shit. And after that, you see Michael. He basically start slowly turning into a vampire. He's like floating and shit, and asking for help and everything. And then, you know, later on, he goes over there back to David and tries to find Star. And Star's nowhere to be found. So David says, okay, well, come hang out with us. Star wants you to see this. So they go to the beach. And this is one of the best scenes that I thought was really cool. They actually finally show you that they're vampires. Because they're like normal face. And then all of a sudden, boom, flash. They have the fucking red eyes and the fangs and everything. And they said, okay, watch this. And then they attack all these guys that are dressed up as punks, you know? They have the fucking 80s mohawk. The leather jacket, of course, you know, that I'm busting out right now. And it shows that they're, you know, grabbing them, pulling them. It shows Kiefer Sutherland, he bites the head of one of the dudes and fucking blood's gushing. And later on, he basically says, now you know what we are, now you know what you're going to become.
Now you know what we
And,
are.
you know, you'll never grow old,
Now you know what you are.
you'll never die,
You'll never
but you
grow,
have to
Michael.
feed, you know? Some cheesy shit like that, I
Never
think.
die.
I've seen this movie probably about 12 times this week, so I do this episode. If I fuck up, let me know, as always, in the comments. But anyways, after that whole scene goes on, he goes home, and then he's trying to deal with his own shit. Basically, after all that's going on, Sam at the same time is calling the Frog Brothers, because they left their phone number on the back of the comic, and they said, okay, if there's any issues, call us, right? So he starts calling them, and then they said, well, what does your brother do? Does he sleep all day? Yeah. Does he have bad breath? Well, he always had bad breath. You know, there was a little bit of comedic stuff into it. You know, they had to tie it in. Then basically, Michael, he finds Star back at the lair. And I don't know what the hell this was. This was kind of a Twilight thing where she's like, I care for you. And then they had sex. And then the vampires, they come back, you know, because it's later on in the day. And then he goes home, and then basically he tells, you know, Sam what had happened and shit. It's night. Star comes back and says everything. Well, oh, David wanted me to use you as a bait and then use you as my first feed because technically you're a half vampire until you've made your first kill, right? Which I thought was pretty cool. It ties a little bit into that whole aspect of it. And while that's going on, shit, I skipped the scene. That happens after Max is invited over to the house. And Sam, he invites over the Frog Brothers. They try to do all these tests and shit to see if Max is the head vampire. For some reason, they thought he was a head vampire. So they give him, like, garlic. They give him Parmesan cheese, but it's, like, fresh ground garlic and all that shit. They try turning off the lights, turning on the reflection to see if he turns to a vampire. Nothing like that. So the mom's date kind of got spoiled twice because she had to run home because of Michael and Sam. Then the date got spoiled because of, you know, Sam and the Frog Brothers. All that stuff. But anyways, after all that happens, they make a plan to go after the vampires in the cave. So as they go in the cave, they figure out where they're sleeping at, and they're all hanging upside down and shit. And they stab Marco. Marco is Alex Winter. He's, most of you don't know the name Alex Winter, but if you know Bill from Bill and Ted, that guy, yeah. He was a Lost Boy. Isn't that crazy? I know. But anyways, they kill him first, because there's only 4. Then as they're running out, Kiefer Sutherland gets pissed and grabs Corey Haim's legs and start pulling him back. They pull his hand to the sun, and then he screams in pain. And then what I thought was pretty cool is the iconic scene where he pulls his hand back, grabs it, and then he's like, tonight. And then there's a fucking teardrop coming out. And that was pretty cool how they did that. They said it was because the contacts were fucking with his eye, but the shot came out just perfect that they just left it in the film. But anyways, they try to go and tell the mom. The mom thinks she's crazy. And she's going to go to Max's house and have dinner and all that shit. And they ended up using the grandpa and telling him, hey, you know, your lady friend called, you know, I guess you guys had a date? So the crazy grandpa, he gets all ready and shit and leaves. As they get all that shit done, they go and they get holy water, fill up the bathtub, they fucking get tons of garlic and all this shit. It's very Home Alone-ish how they start setting up everything. Then they left the dog outside, and then Corey Haim gets all freaked out because he's like, fuck, I left the Nook outside. Goes out there, grabs the dog. You know, they do that cheesy thing where they're running back, they slip, they get up, they go back. I mean, you know, you have to have that. It's a horror film, right? And then later on, you see that Corey Haim and Michael, they get taken down by a vampire. And then you see that the Frog Brothers are going upstairs with Star and the little boy Laddie that they had with them. And they basically said, I think we should just kill her right now. She's a vampire. So as they try running around the house, the other vampire comes out and tries to kill him. You kill Marco! You're next! Then they see the fucking garlic. Garlic don't work, boys.
Garlic don't work, boys. Try holy water, death breath.
And they fucking splashed him with holy water. The dog hits him, goes in the tub with the holy water, and everything blows up and shit. As that was going on, they were showing scenes like how they were getting ready and shit. And Corey Feldman, some of the cheesiest lines in this film, he basically said, no vampire goes out the same. Some explode, some implode. And some go quietly, some don't, right? And so you see that when this vampire gets killed in the tub full of holy water, all the fucking toilets, all the faucets in all the house, they all just shoot out tons and tons of blood. While that's going on, Corey Haim, or Sam and Michael, they're downstairs. Michael's knocked out because he's fucking in between states because he's turning into a vampire. He hasn't fed yet. So anyways, this vampire comes up, picks up Sam, fucks with him. He pulls out his little water gun, you know, sprays him with holy water, drops him, shoots him with a bow and arrow. He gets up and says the best line, I think, out of the whole film that made me fucking laugh. You miss, sucker. Only once, pal. And then, you know, the arrow goes right through him, hits a stereo, gets electrocuted, blows up. That's that one right there. And then as they're going up and meeting up with everything, then all of a sudden David comes in and starts fucking with Michael. And then you have this big epic scene about Michael turning into a vampire, and it shows Michael actually transformed. And they start fighting and everything. And all basically David wanted to do was get him to join the club, join the boys, right? As they're fighting, they go into the grandpa's like taxidermy room, because the grandpa did taxidermy, and he basically says, your blood is in my blood is in your veins. And that's where he admits to him that it was actually the blood that he drank, it wasn't wine. Then, you know, he turns around and says, so is mine. Flips him over right through the antlers. Now there's a theory on this. All the vampires were killed, except when David was killed, you know, Kiefer Sutherland, the antlers went right through him, and instead of him blowing up or anything, a fucking white light comes on, it plays Cry Little Sister, and he turns back to normal. But he doesn't explode, you know? There was rumors speculating that he was alive. There's rumors saying that he quietly went, you know, because it followed what Corey Feldman was saying, you know? Or the Edgar brother. Edgar Frog, one of the Frog brothers, right? But anyways, as that was all going on, then the mom comes home with Max, and then Max sees the mess, and then he says, well, my boys try to get with your boys because I have a thing for you, but they fucked it up. And then the mom's like, what are you talking about? You know, because the mom is kind of a hippie-ish, you know, so she's very open-spirited. So he was like, well, I never changed my mind about that. I still want you, Lucy. And then you find out the whole time that Max was a head vampire. And he was trying to use David and his buddies to try to lure in Sam and Michael. That was the big climax of it. And as they're all fighting, they're all getting knocked out by Max and shit. And then all of a sudden, he grabs Sam, holds him in a headlock, and basically says, join me, Lucy. So as she's about to join him, and he was going to bite her neck, all of a sudden the grandpa comes with his funky horn sound car. The funky horn that he has on his car. Pushes him right through. He gets impaled, goes into the fireplace. Poof. All the vampires are dead at this point. Grandpa comes out, everyone's all happy that they're okay. Grandpa's like, fuck. Goes into the refrigerator, gets his cold root beer, and he chugs it. And then they're all like, you alright? He's like, yeah. The one thing I couldn't stand out here in Santa Carla is all the damn vampires.
One thing about living in Santa Carla I never could stomach. All the damn vampires.
And then they're all their faces just like, the fuck you do this whole time? Movie ends. Great fucking film. It really is. I know I skimmed through it. I missed some parts. I'm probably reading it right now in the comments like, hey, you forgot about that scene. You forgot about this. I know. For time constraints, for 30 minutes, I know. But I wanted to get more points across because after doing my Lost Boy research, I wanted to throw out some little bit of tidbits, see if you guys remember this or if you knew this, actually. The whole movie, they don't call any of the vampires the Lost Boys. And this whole movie was actually a wink to Peter Pan. The whole story of Peter Pan, and even the dog's name, the Nook, was named after one of the Peter Pan characters. I'm not sure if it was the dog or whatever, because it takes off the old folktale of it, and then it basically, the tagline is even the same, sleep all day, party all night, never grow old, never die, you know what I mean? I thought that was a pretty interesting twist on how they did that. And then also, too, back into what I was talking about with David. David gets impaled, and the rumor was they were going to do a sequel to this film and do The Lost Girls with David somehow coming back and controlling. Well, he would bite a girl, and then she'd be like the leader of the group and everything, and he'd be a part of it. But that never happened. For whatever reason, I don't know. I mean, Warner Brothers owns the rights to it, and I don't know why they never did. I mean, because it did okay in theaters. It wasn't a smash box office hit. It didn't become a smash hit until it was released on VHS, and then it just blew the fuck up, because that's when you can rent videos, like more available, I guess you could say. VCRs weren't like $1,000. I mean, they actually were pretty up in price. I exaggerate that, but if you lived in the 80s, you remember, that shit was expensive, and you couldn't afford to go and buy videos, so you rented them, which made it a lot easier because you could still enjoy the films. And that's what basically drove the sales of the movie. Video rental places would buy a shitload of these films so that way they can make money on the rentals and all that. But that's how it became such a smash hit. They obviously, I won't talk too much into the sequels, but they did a part 2 and they did a part 3. Part 2 was to tie in the original Frog Brothers and Corey Haim. It's unfortunate that Corey Haim, he passed away a little bit after this film was made, and, had some issues going on personally that he couldn't go through, and that's why he was excluded from the second film. He didn't stay around long enough to do the third one. I think they honored the third one for him, but, I mean, the sequels were okay. I thought it was kind of cool that they had a lot of winks. Like, they got Kiefer Sutherland's younger brother to play the head vampire in part 2. But, anyways, back to the first film. The first film was great right off the bat. And it was great because you had great fucking acting, Kiefer Sutherland, he joined on because, they were going to have an, NXS band. They were going to have a couple of their songs on there. So he's like, oh, fuck it, you got that on there? Yeah, I'll join, That's how he got in. Jason Patric, he was kind of so well known, not too big. Corey Haim became big because, he had already starred in Silver Bullet and a couple of other films. Corey Feldman, he became a little bit more bigger because he starred in a lot of 80s commercials, and, obviously he went on to do Jason first, and then he became his own star in The Lost Boys. Then you had Alex Winter. Like I said, he was Bill from Bill and Ted. He got his start from actually a film, an action film, Death Wish 3, one of my favorite action films. He was like one of the gang leaders and stuff like that. So he already, he fit the type already with the role, since he already had been in that. But then you also have, Diane Wiest. She was pretty well known still, And then the guy who played Max, Ed Herman, he was pretty well known too, So, you had a good cast that knew what the fuck they were doing. And what was funny is that this film was originally done by Richard Donner, which, as production was going on, he backed out of it because he wanted to do Lethal Weapon. It was a different era. Lethal Weapon had, bigger main stars, I guess, and that's why he left to go and do that film and direct it. But, he did a lot of winks to it. Like, in the background, you see at the Wiltern Theater, the Lost Boys, showing the Lost Boys. So it was pretty cool. But once he dropped out, he still stayed on the Lost Boys as producer. And even in the credits, it says a Richard Donner production. And then it says, Joel Schumacher directed it. I know you guys are thinking, what the fuck, Joel Schumacher? Yeah, the guy who did Batman Forever and Batman and Robin. He also did Phone Booth, which starred Kiefer Sutherland as well. Hey, they keep it down the line, right? But what he did in this film, he originally, from all the research I looked into, they basically were saying that they wanted to do it as like a teeny, kind of more like the Goonies, more like teeny bopper, more kid-friendly. But Joel Schumacher said, no, let's do it with more teen-oriented, teen adolescence. And he hit it right on the nail right there. Like that, because of the fact of, a lot of teeny boppers were the ones that were going to go see films like this, you know, especially horror films, you know. It was the 80s, come on. You had to watch horror films at that time, you know. But anyways, he changed a lot of it, and it was done for the good. It really was. Like, it was very impressive to how he did it. It catered to a lot of the audiences. Even to this day, it still holds up. I mean, if you were to watch any modern vampire film, the only modern ones that I think have been good recently have been Let Me In or Let the Right One In. There's two versions of foreign and American. They were both great. But, you know, it got watered down because of the stupid Twilight series. And I know some of you guys like Twilight, and I'm not bashing on it. It's just, I don't do that, you know. I'm a horror movie guy, and that's it, you know. If you like Twilight, I'm sorry. Not trying to bash, but, you know, it's not my vampire thing that I like, okay? But it got overplayed out with it, you know, with vampires and stuff. So that's why you don't see too many of them. And the ones that are around, they're really fucking great. And they all came from, you know, the 80s. 80s really defined a lot of different types of horror genres. But, you know, when they did this film, and there was that talk of doing the sequels, they never did it. But this film had made such a cult following, and it's fucking huge. Over here in California, this film is fucking huge. And as I said earlier in this episode, that they do an event every year. That's not a lie for it. If you look it up, whether it's on Google or YouTube, in Santa Cruz where they filmed it, right at the boardwalk, what they do, which is pretty cool, is that, you know, you can sit at the beach. They have this inflatable, what do you call it? This inflatable screen, and then they stream, you know, the Lost Boys for everybody to watch. And it's pretty cool because they still have a lot of the landmarks there. The house that they filmed everything in, you know, the grandpa's house, it's still there. Unfortunately, because of the coastal weather, it's all condemned and shit and rotted out, so they had to block it off, unfortunately. But they filmed it at a country club, which is like on the top of the hill and nothing around it. Which is pretty cool, because in the movie they made it seem like it's just this weird random house, you know? A lot of the, like, the Big Dipper rides, a lot of those old boardwalk signs, even the carousel's still around. Except I think the carousel, they don't have it outside. Now they have it enclosed to protect it and preserve the history of it. But, I mean, you know, with this film, it became really fucking huge in California. Because as soon as everyone saw the main landmarks of, you know, the Big Dipper, the, what do they call it? The Ferris wheel, you know, all the iconic scenes of the Santa Cruz Boardwalk, everybody knew, like, that's not fucking Santa Carla, that's Santa Cruz. But they couldn't call it Santa Cruz because, as I was saying earlier, there was a lot of, you know, missing cases. There was a lot of, you know, missing people. There's a lot of murders. It's in the central coast of California. So, basically, it's, at that time, especially in the late 80s, you had a lot of craziness going on, you know. So much in violence that it just, like, I don't know how to explain it. The violence was just so bad, and especially in a town like Santa Cruz, it's just, it actually did have that nickname. I wouldn't say the murder capital of the world, but they had a lot of issues. And this movie played off of it. And when they came out and said, hey, we want to film it here, the people in Santa Cruz, I don't know if it was the Chamber of Commerce or something, they basically said, you know, you can film it here, just don't call it Santa Cruz because we don't want to, you know, kill off tourism or anything like that. So they named it Santa Carla. So I thought it was pretty cool, you know. If you've never been over there, a lot of the land sites and the filming locations are still there. And believe it or not, they're all adjacent, like, in vicinity of the actual boardwalk, you know, like the bridge scene, the house is on a trail, like, a little bit away from it. But the boardwalk and the beach and the stairs where they drive through and have the dirt bike race and shit, they still have that. And what's pretty cool is that every other year, I don't know if he still does it, but Corey Feldman himself will go out there for the screenings and stuff and meet the fans because he's a real cool, down-to-earth guy. I met him, the other Frog Brother, and Laddie a couple years, well, I was going to say a couple years. Shit, this is 10 years ago when they did Halloween Horror Nights. I went over there, and just out of the blue, he was just walking, and went and said hi and everything, said I was a fan, and he was real cool, and took a picture and everything, and real down-to-earth people. They really were, you know, always great for the fans. I never forgot that, you know, and from what I've always heard, he goes out there from time to time. I don't know if it's an every year thing. Obviously, you know, probably not, but every other year he does, because I know they do something big for it. A few years back, they actually had, or actually no, 2 years ago, or last year, they had the 30th anniversary, and they did something big for it. Unfortunately, I missed it. I know. And it's down the road from me. But, I mean, with The Lost Boys, it's an iconic film. It's great. You know, everything on it mashed really well. I didn't even get into the soundtrack. I mean, besides the saxophone player, you know, just gyrating the saxophone, he was a real saxophone player and became famous because of this, because he was in the film for, you know, less than a minute, but I mean, his song was on the soundtrack. And then the Cry Little Sister song was just fucking amazing, you know? That song was done by Gerald McMahon. He goes by G-Mac, various different names, you know? But he still sings that song, he's still around. But that song became so iconic that so many people covered it. I know you guys probably seen it in my teasers, where I show the picture saying, announcing the Lost Boys episode, and then I'll play like Cry Little Sister, but I'll play different versions. There's ones from metal bands like Season After. There's, you know, independent bands, you know, like Dead Roses. They did a real good cover, which I was like, whoa, okay, this is pretty cool. Aiden did one for part 2 for the sequel. The most recent one I like is the one from Marilyn Manson. He just released that about a couple months ago, and that one's just fucking amazing. You know, why he never did this cover years ago beats me. But, I mean, when you have a great soundtrack, you have great actors, you're going to make an iconic horror film. It's going to last forever, you know? It really is, you know? And even to this day, I still watch it. Even if I didn't have to do this episode, I still probably will watch it, you know? But let me know in the comments below what you guys think. Do you still find The Lost Boys very interesting? Is it still one of your favorites? Is it one of your top vampire films? Or is it one of your top favorite horror films of all time? Shit, even 80s films, you know? Let me know in the comments, because I'm always interested to know. I know a lot of people... There's mixed feelings between the sequels with part 2 and part 3 on one of them. But, you know, as a fan of the film, I still went out and bought the movies, still watched them and everything, and still like them, you know. But this film will always stand out. You know, the first one, because it's just amazing. They did so great on the effects. Everything from, you know, not just the way how they did the makeup, but the acting and just the way all-around execution. It can't be redone. Or maybe it can. Who knows? You know, there's talk about it. In my opinion, I think this would be great if they did a TV show and it followed, you know, the Frog Brothers when they were young, how they became vampire hunters, or how they first knew that there's vampires in Santa Carla. That'd be pretty cool, you know? I know I've said that before somewhere, but if Hollywood's listening and they hear my idea, remember SaWGuy presented to you first, right? But anyways, thanks for tuning in, guys. I appreciate everything, and I'll catch y'all next time, okay?